In this LayerCake session, I'll begin by describing what actions are. Actions are pre-recorded shortcuts that will save you time and speed up your workflow. I will give you an overview of the LayerCake Action Palette and demonstrate how to use these actions that reside in the palette. Seen here is the LayerCake Action Palette with over 190 actions. Let's load an action. When you first receive a LayerCake collection, there will be a subfolder named Actions. Know where that subfolder resides. Now let's open Photoshop and click on Window at the top of the toolbar. And let's look for the Action Palette. Let's click on it, and your Action Palette will appear. Now let's load that action. First thing you do is go to this little arrow that points down. You navigate down to Load Actions, and now you need to know where you loaded those actions. Remember, it's in a LayerCake collection. I'm going to look for it. So let's find it. I have these stored on my external drive, and the particular background that I have is called the LayerCake Background Collection. Every collection will have an action set. I'll click on the action set, click here, and there it is loaded in your action palette. I recommend that you immediately save your actions. If you don't and you shut down your computer, your actions could be lost and you'll have to reload them again. Set up an action folder if you don't have one and remember where you placed it. I put my actions in the action folder in Photoshop. Some people like to put their folder on the desktop. I will navigate again to the top of the action palette, click the little down arrow, and here I'm going to navigate down to where it says Save Actions. And now I'm going to save my action on my C drive. I'm going to go to my program files. I'm going to click on Adobe, and I happen to be using CS3 for this presentation. It happens to be in Presets, which is where the actions are. And now I'm going to save these actions in the Action folder of Photoshop. There we go. Photoshop provides two modes in the Action palette that you can work with. This happens to be the black and white mode. The reason I don't like to work in this is because it's a two-step process. Let's say I want to do a drop shadow, so I have to click on that. That's one step, and then I have to click on the arrow to the right, which is the second step. As you can see, the action did work, but it's a two-step process. So let's go to the button mode. You click the down arrow, and you click on button mode. As you can see, the action palette in the button mode has color bars. The yellow represents the category, and the gray represents the actions in those categories. Now here's the reason I like to use the button mode instead of the black and white mode. If you remember, in the black and white mode, I had to select the action, and then I had to go down below, and I had to click an arrow. That was a two-step process. Here, it's just a one-step process, and I can just keep clicking away until I get the right action. Just a quick review on how to get into the button mode and how to deactivate it. Down arrow, you click button mode and it deactivates it. You click it again and it activates it. If you're anything like I am, you have either purchased actions from other companies or you've made some of the actions yourself. Therefore, you have lots of different actions in your palette, so how do you find the LayerCake Action Palette? Here's how you do it. If you go to the top here, you're going to find Welcome to LayerCake in red, and at the bottom it's going to say End of LayerCake. Newly loaded actions appear at the bottom of an action palette. Setting up your action palette. What I like to do is I like to work in one column. But again, if you have room, and many of you have different screens that you can work with or larger monitor sizes, you can just pull it out by simply dragging the cursor onto the edge and pulling it out. There you go. Or you can shorten it by doing so, and then you can scroll down if you so choose. Once again, the yellow bar happens to represent the categories, and the gray bars are the actions in those categories. The only exception are the green bars, and the green bars are the undo, and you're going to use that very often. So therefore, those green bars, which are the undo bars, are in every category. As we scroll down, you can see them there. Let's start at the top and go through the action palette. The first thing is Read Me. When you click here, you can print it out. It's also available to you on the disk that has a subfolder called LayerCake Quick Action Reference Guide. Print that out and make that available to yourself as you're going through the tutorials. You see here 8-bit conversion mode. Many of you work in 16-bit. The LayerCake Action Palette will not work in 16-bit. Therefore, all you have to do is depress this gray area here called 8-bit conversion. It converts it to an 8-bit, and then you're able to work with the LayerCake actions. Let's quickly cover this category called album pages or album spreads. LayerCake has provided a series of actions that will open as many as 5 of the most popular album spreads used by hobbyists, wedding, and portrait photographers. Sizes will range from 10 by 10 to 12 by 24. For your convenience, the spreads have half-inch light gray bleed borders. Anything inside of that bleed border is the safe zone for you to add your text and graphics. This ensures a more professional appearance and eliminates any risk of type or images being accidentally nicked during the trimming. The bleed border is a separate layer and can be eliminated if you so choose to do. Let's take the 8 by 20 and we'll click it. Now there's going to be a command, and you're going to see messages, and messages will be throughout every one of our actions. Not in all cases, but in some cases. Here it says do not input any data in the gray area. Let's continue. These are the gray areas here, which are the bleed zones. This is the safe zone right here. And in the gray area, which is the bleed zone, if you were to go into that zone, chances are that it could be cut during the trimming process when you send your album out to be produced. Each spread has an action that allows you to add color. For example, your 8 by 20, select your color. Let's click on that, and the message says hit OK. Green is the default color. Slide up or down on the color chart to choose your color. Let's continue. And we'll hit OK again, and there's your color. Now all you have to do is slide up and down on the color chart, and your color can be used accordingly. And remember, this is the safe zone where you can do your design work, and this is the bleed zone, which is not safe. This is the original photo that has yet to be color corrected. So I'm just going to navigate here to my I Feel Lucky Color Correct. Click on that, and there, all of a sudden, the yellow is gone, and it is now color corrected. That doesn't work on all photos, but if you feel lucky enough to try it, it will work on many of them. Some of the most powerful and sophisticated aspects of Photoshop are here on the Action Palette, which really saves you gobs of time trying to navigate through Photoshop and their maze of procedures. For instance, here's an example. We have Select All, Paste, Undo, Redo, Duplicate, and Delete. And here we have Move to the Front and Back. Here's an example of the move to the front and back. Instead of trying to find this action or this procedure in the Photoshop system, it's here right on the Action Palette. And here's an action that's right here on the palette where I'm going to bring the frame to the front. I'm just going to click on the frame, and we're going to move over here to the Action Palette, and then we're going to click on Bring to Front, and there it is. Many of your actions won't work on a flattened background. Let me explain. Let's take a look at the layer palette, and as you can see, there are no layers on top of this. On your yellow category bars, there is a description on layer only, which means these actions will not work unless there's a layer on top of it. Some of these include tilt and rotate, and so on. I'm going to first bring in a photo now, and then we'll go to the layer palette, and now there are 2 layers. So let's go back to the Action Palette, and we'll go down to tilt and rotate, and there, it works. Now I'm going to return to the flattened background. As you can see here, there are no layers on top of it. Let's go to the Action Palette, and let's click on Tilt to the right, and there's a command that says Transform is not currently available. That's because there is no layer on top of the background. Now always remember that the yellow represent categories, and if you click on the categories, the actions don't work. Now you'll be clicking on actions, and you're going to ask yourself, why don't some of these actions look very good? That's correct. They don't, because actions are designed to give you choices. For instance, you wouldn't hit the saturation button if an image has too much saturation. The same is true for all the actions. You are a click or two away from finding that perfect match. Let me give you some examples. This is a pretty good example of why some of the actions work and some of them don't. But the wonderful thing with the LayerCake action palette, you can try them by going up and down and clicking away. So let's try this one first. Let's try hard mix. That looks pretty bad. Let's try darker color. Once again, it disappears. It doesn't work. Let's try luminosity. Looks good, but not great. Let's try overlay. Wonderful. So there's an example of how some of the actions work and why some of them don't work as well. Here are some other examples of how some of your actions will work with the artistic palette, and sometimes they won't. So let's go to the artistic palette here, and we'll try a painterly light. We'll try a painterly light. I don't like that as well as if I were to try a painterly edge effect. There, that's better. Let's zoom in and take a look. So as you can see, you're a click away from going from one action to the other until you're happy with the desired result. Let's scroll down to the font actions. There are over 50 amazing colors. This happens to be a font that I just typed using the regular Photoshop typing tool. This represents the monogram that is in our LayerCake background collection. As you will see, the font actions work on pre-selected as demonstrated with this monogram, or the font that I just typed onto the background. The LayerCake font actions only work on fonts, as you can see here. If I were to click on Mary and then try the LayerCake font actions, you can see what happens. Now let's talk about the size of the action palette. With over 190 actions, you certainly don't want to keep scrolling down to find the action that you work with most often when you're working on, let's say, a wedding collection. So here's what I do. The first thing I do is click out of the button mode and go into the black and white mode by deselecting the button mode. And now we're in the black and white mode. The most often one that I use is tilt and rotate, so let's select that and bring that to the top. And here's how I do it. You want to make sure that all the little arrows are pointing to the right. There, now they're all pointed in the right direction. I select the top, I hold my Shift key down, and I go down to the end of the category, which is right here. And I simply take my mouse and I drag it to the top. And let's put it where we'd like to put it. So in this case, we're just going to put it right to the top. There we go. And now if we were to take a look at the button mode, go into the button mode, you're going to see that tilt and rotate is right where I want it. Okay, now I'm ready, and I'll show you what I've done here. I put the tilt and rotate on top, which I use often. Then I've got the black and white, the sepia and the black and white right here. And then I've got the various borders right here, and then I have the transparency. These are probably the four most often used actions for the wedding collection. Now I'm going to also add the black and white sepia to the various photos. So let's go here and let's take a look at a sepia. We'll click on this and we'll do the old world sepia. Now let's do a black and white here. And we'll do a sepia over here. And let's make him a sepia as well. There you go. Took a matter of minutes and the album was completed. This ends our session on working with LayerCake actions. Please join us at www.layercakeelements.com. Thank you very much.